My dad taught me how to breathe when I was a kid. In, out, it's gonna be okay. Impatience can make anxiety happen. But if you just take a second and take like 5 deep breaths, you can lean into who you are, which is probably a smart person who knows how to take care of themselves and has been managing something really difficult for probably a good amount of time.
How does your family show up for you now?
I mean, all the time. So let me start over.
When he's setting it up, he's like, all right, cool, we're gonna set the chessboard. It's too spicy.
I'm Eritrea Musa. I live in Dallas, Texas, and I live with diabetic macular edema. I think something that is very similar about, Islamic culture and maybe Mexican culture is that food is a staple. And living with diabetes, food is such a big part of my life that my mom always wanted me to be able to eat all the cultural foods that I possibly could. So getting around a table and having a meal with my family is what I grew up doing all the time. My brothers will play chess with my dad, and usually my mom is the last one to sit down, and that's how she likes it. She wants everyone to be fed and taken care of before she's fed and taken care of.
Oscar, can we warm up the food for you?
My parents never tried to put me in a box because they knew I was too big for it. It was like this radical acceptance of who I am as a human being. Like, Eritrea talks a lot, and Eritrea is who she is, and she's not gonna change, and we are okay with that. I was just raised by people who were like, okay, you wanna go to some clinical trial in Germany where they might cure you and you're 12. Let's see if we can afford it. So there was never a no, it was like, okay, let's see how we can do it. Let's try to figure this out, always. I was 29 years old when I was diagnosed with DME. I had just come back from Africa. I remember that at the time, the person I was married to, he hadn't taken out the garbage. And there was like 3 or 4 bags of garbage in the garage, and I was like, why am I coming back to a dirty house? It was just so frustrating, right? And I remember the moment that we were like yelling at each other, and then suddenly I saw what I now know is a floater in my eye. But at the time, I was just like seeing little specks. And I was like, wait, am I clenching my jaw so tightly that I'm like making my eye bleed or something? Like, what's going on, right? So when I finally went to see the specialist, he was like, your eye is bleeding and you have something called diabetic macular edema. And I'd never, ever, ever heard of it before. At this point, I've had diabetes for 20 years. And I'm like, what? As he's giving me this diagnosis, I was like filled with shame and guilt and some thought processes of, did I not do my diabetes the right way? Is this my fault? He was like, no, you've just lived with diabetes for a long time. And that's hard when you're 29, to be told you've had a disease already for close to 20 years or a little bit more. I was so sure that I was going blind. Like, this was gonna be the beginning of the end of my sight. So I'd go outside and sit in my yard with my dog, and I'd stare at the sky, and I'd like take mental pictures because I was like, I might not ever get to see the sky. It was a really rough 8 months. I got diagnosed with DME in December of 2021, and I got separated and later divorced in June of 2022. It felt like a lot of grief, right? Like, I have this new diagnosis, I have a lot of bills now, I no longer have a husband. So then my brain naturally went into the things I was lacking. I remember I texted our family group chat at like 3 a.m, and I was like, guys, I feel like I'm gonna die. So it's just like a lot of crying and anguish and pain because you're confused about the route your life is taking. You thought it was going a certain way, and it's actually going the other way. And I remember that at 3 a.m, 40 minutes after that text message, my dad and my 3 brothers came to my house. And I was sitting on my couch, and I was crying and crying. And my brother sat next to me, and my dad looked in front of me, and he said, we are your tribe. We are your tribe, tell us what you need. And I was like, I'm sad and I'm alone. My brother was like, you don't have to be alone. Do you wanna go for a walk tomorrow? Do you wanna go for a lunch on Thursday? And they made a schedule of like when they were gonna hang out with me. And so since then, I've always thought about all the sad moments in my life and how I've never been alone, ever. Because I had an entire life before this person and an entire life before this diagnosis, and that wasn't gonna go away because of a situation. And I was lucky that I had people to look to that would turn on the light for me when I couldn't. I am a professionally chronically ill person. I'm not a patient, because a patient is a person who's not involved in their treatment. They're like, just removed from it. I'm someone who's very involved. So when I went to my appointment and I got my diagnosis, I told this gentleman, who probably didn't expect it, that I had health goals. And he was like, what? And I was like, I have vision goals. And he was like, I'm sorry. And I was like, I want to be able to see when I'm 65. Can you make that happen? Because to me, a doctor's like a mechanic. And I am a BMW. So I need a good mechanic who's gonna make sure that this runs for a long time. He was like, absolutely. That is a goal that we can achieve.
Y entonces así, al otro día tempranito le hablé a la doctora.
There's been so many challenges and obstacles in my life that I've come to my mom with. And there's always been moments and space for my grief or my feelings or whatever I feel, right? She's never invalidated that. But then it comes to a certain point where it's like, okay, what are we gonna do about it? Like, are we gonna lay down and die? That's one thing she's always says, like, you're not gonna lay down and die. So what next?
To me, that just connects with you saying, I want to see when I'm 65. Like, that's what's next.
Yeah, it's a lot of future planning, right? So I think when you don't get a chance to plan your future out, maybe there's times where you regret it. And I got lucky that the people who raised me thought about it that way. They didn't just think in regret and were like, okay, we can't do anything about it. Like, their minds are so, what can we do? And so that was like just programmed into me. So even when like I'm scared or nervous, or it's like, okay, breathe. I'm gonna tell you a story my dad told me when I was a kid. We went for a walk after a day. I got in a big fight with my brothers. I was really mad. And my dad and I were walking, and he was like, Eritrea, this is your tribe. These are your people. You need them. And I remember he picked up a stick off the ground, and he was like, you see this stick? And I remember his little accent, do you see this stick? And he broke it. He's like, one stick you break, no problem. And he picked up a bunch of sticks. We were walking on some trail, and he's like, you see these? He was like, trying to break me. Like, you see, it's hard. You can't break someone when they're with their tribe. Stick with your people. Your brothers are your people. And I think that kind of always lended to the diabetes portion, where it's like, you don't have to do this by yourself. You have a tribe. Being a part of the diabetes community is a club that nobody asked to be a part of, but you're in it. And you can lean on other people to help you. You don't have to get snapped in half. And I've always just kind of carried that kind of stuff with me. My parents are full of antidotes. You met them. They have stories for days. And I've just been lucky to get to sit around that fire and hear those stories.